Hello there, it's Austin. Today we're going to brew this German Helles. So let's get started. We'll start our brew day, actually the day before our brew day, by collecting some reverse osmosis water. I need 4.8 gallons of RO water for this batch of Helles specifically, but I'm actually trying out a double brew day today, which means I'm collecting right around 10 gallons and splitting it between the two batches. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but specifically for the Helles batch, I'll be adjusting my water with these concentrations of gypsum, calcium chloride, and Epsom salt. I did just put out a video on brewing salts, so if you're a little confused about the process and want to be more confused, you can click that link in the top right. For the malts, I'll be using Pilsner malt, Munich malt, and a little bit of acidulated and melanoidin malt. This recipe is actually based on one of my absolute favorite beers right now, so shout out to Pfriem Brewing for being awesome and publishing the ingredients that you use in your beers, so that we can, try to copy it but then end up buying it anyways. But with everything added into the kettle, we'll let it sit for about 60 minutes, stirring it every 15 minutes or so. And when that's finally finished up, it's time to pull the grains out and let them drain back down into the kettle. At this point, instead of my normal procedure of rinsing the grains to draw out any extra efficiency, I'm actually going to drop my grains directly into the other batch of water that I gathered and preheated. The goal was to kind of save some of those residual sugars and build a new batch with a little bit of extra malt added for a completely different style. But we'll talk about that more in an upcoming video. Switching back over to the main event, which is now boiling in our Anvil Foundry, it's time for the hop additions, starting with a 30-minute charge of cluster hops. This is an old American style hop, which is more associated with American lager, but I think contributes some of the noble characteristics that I'm looking for here. And then a 5-minute charge of Tettnang, which is much more traditional Helles hop addition, which is good, gotta have balance. A quick gravity reading showed I was a little under my target gravity of 1046, which is not great, but kind of to be expected considering I didn't spend much time rinsing my grains like I normally do. With the wort transferred over to the keg that I'll be fermenting in, it's time to pitch the yeast. I'm using the Nova Lager strain and fermenting at room temperature. This is the first time in a long time that I've used a dry yeast, and certainly the first time I've used one without building up a starter first, but I've heard good things about this yeast, and I will be fermenting it under 12 to 14 psi of pressure, so hopefully that keeps all the scary off flavors at bay. After 2 weeks or so of fermenting away, it's time to transfer from my fermentation keg to my serving keg, and then drop it down to my Keezer and connect it up to the gas line. At this point, since it's already carbonated from fermentation, it's pretty much ready to serve right away. I let mine condition for a couple weeks to help it clarify a little bit, but then it's time to enjoy our a little bit under 5% German Helles. This batch was a little bit frustrating because I can tell it's so close to being exactly what I was aiming for. It's playing all the right notes, it's just kind of doing them at the wrong volumes and with too much sulfur, which would also ruin a musical performance, I guess. It's pretty loosely based on one of my favorite lagers right now, which I guess kind of puts it in a little bit of an unfair perspective, but if I had to narrow down the problems I had with it, I guess maybe focusing on brewing 2 batches in one day definitely had an impact on my efficiency, and because of that, I'm kind of getting a little bit of a watery version of the flavors that I'm looking for as far as the malt bill goes. The hop aroma and the hop flavor are fine. On top of a little bit of a watered down malt flavor, I'm definitely getting a little bit too much sulfur out of this Nova Lager yeast, for my preference at least. If I had to do it again, I would definitely focus on making sure my efficiencies were met, and maybe use a different yeast to kind of change up the fermentation character. It didn't really clear up too well, but that one's kind of on me because I did move the keg around a couple of days ago. I guess most of it's on me, but that one is especially on me recently. The good news is there's definitely not any off flavors, and I have served it to a few of my friends and they said they enjoyed it, so I have really supportive friends at least. Overall, it's definitely a good candidate for trying again one day. I think it shows promise, and oh no, I guess I have to brew some more Helles. Cheers.